Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we have another of these Robo-Alive Dino Action Zuru Toys figures to take a look at today, and this time we are going to be taking a look at the T-Rex. So we've got a pretty cool looking Tyrannosaurus, I guess. Definitely not the best one that Zuru has released, but it's also, not the worst. As far as the packaging goes, you can see the packaging looks pretty cool. We have a nice image of the T-Rex down here. I also love these images in the background back there of like the T-Rex kind of leaping up to grab itself a pteranodon. That's definitely really neat. I love the way that they had created that box art. Definitely looks nice. And then here on the back, you can see some of the aspects of the figure itself, that same image that we had seen on the front, as well as a listing here of all the other different figures that are in the Robo-Alive line, and one of which we have, well, actually quite a few of which we have reviewed here in the past, but we've reviewed that Dino Action Raptor recently. We also have the Pterodactyl to review very soon, but we've also reviewed quite a few other figures like these Dino Wars figures that we have down here. We've also taken a look at here in the past on the channel. But anyway, I'm quite intrigued to see this because I did really quite like the Raptor, so let's break this T-Rex out right now. So here is our T-Rex, and he's definitely a goofy looking T-Rex, that's for sure. You can see he's got a little bit of an odd shape to him, certainly has a pretty large head. The thing I think I dislike the most about the figure is the tail length, because it's really short and just kind of looks awkward on the figure. And it's definitely not the best. I think that the figures that they released, specifically the T-Rex, actually, the newer T-Rex that they had released in the Dino Strike line, is quite a bit nicer than this Rex that we have here, but at the same time, it kind of looks fun. It doesn't really look like an adult Rex to me, though. It looks more like it would be like a very young T-Rex, maybe approaching like a juvenile, just because the proportions are off on it quite a bit, and it doesn't have that kind of full-grown Rex type of a look to it, if you ask me. But at the same time, again, it is a Zuru Toys release, so it's definitely not meant to be some sort of incredible, highly accurate Tyrannosaurus. It's just meant to be a pretty fun figure, a toy for kids, and I guess you can give it that. But still, again, I kind of hoped for a little more after the Raptor, because I thought the Raptor was pretty cool. And I think this Rex might fall a little bit short compared to that Raptor. But regardless, let's jump to a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our T-Rex, straight away you can see the detail is definitely a little muted, similar to what we saw on the Raptor actually, because I remember the Raptor's detailing in the face being slightly muted, and that's exactly the same type of a look that we have for the T-Rex here. You can see the nostrils are sculpted out, the palate's also nicely sculpted. We have kind of like clusters of larger scales here around the eye and leading up into the eyebrow area, kind of almost like osteoderm type scales there. We have yet again a glass eye type look, but just like with the Raptor, like the eyes are kind of hard to see, like that. It looks like a really nicely detailed eye in there, but the glass eye effect that they've used on this kind of takes away from the figure. It's similar to the Hammond Collection T-Rex, although this is obviously no comparison for that figure, but the eyes just don't look as good as they probably could, because the glass eye effect just doesn't work that well. It almost looks more like the Rex is blind rather than those really nice looking eyes that I can see are back there, but you really have to get at a good angle to see them. We do have an articulated jaw, and of course an articulated tongue as well, just like we had on the Raptor. You can see that there's not really much going on detail-wise on the inside of the mouth, but the teeth are painted pretty nicely for the most part. Similar to the Raptor, we have a lighter tone for the lower jaw, making it kind of hard to distinguish if we actually have coloration for the teeth, or if it's all just the same color of the lower jaw, but it actually does look like, yet again, it looks like there is coloration for the teeth. It's just a little harder to see than, obviously, the teeth here on the upper jaw. We have a reddish tone of color for the majority of the face, and then we start to get a black up here on the top that sort of creeps in here about halfway through the head, and you can see that the top of the Rex is kind of like an armored type of a look, like similar to those larger scales that we have there on the top of the eyebrow area. You can see that we also have that running along the back, kind of like a ridge line here along the back as well. And I will say that the transition from the black to the red looks pretty good, fairly smooth overall, but we continue to have kind of lackluster detail moving down here into the neck. You can kind of see creasing and stuff, but you don't really see too much as far as scale detail or actual skin texture. As we transition down to the lighter tone here of the throat, you can kind of see it almost becomes like a speckly type of a look with that reddish coloration. But you can see quite a bit of like creasing and wrinkling and everything here in the throat region of our T-Rex. As you move down, you continue to have that same style of sculpt here along the back, kind of almost like an armored type of a look. And again, some okay looking detail. It definitely looks better in the body than it did up in the face and neck region. As far as the skin texture goes, it's definitely nicer looking down there. Same deal, honestly, down here in the arms. Obviously, the arms are way too long to be a Tyrannosaur's arms, but they're very muscular. It's definitely been hitting the gym. We do have painted nails, which is always a huge plus, something we don't always get from certain companies. And obviously, Zuru is not that company because they tend to give us those painted nails quite often, actually. As you move down the thigh, you can see some slices, some injuries and stuff, which is something Zuru does quite often, which I actually really quite like. Nice realistic aspect to the figure. You've got a kneecap right there, nice calf muscle as well. You've got kind of like a scoot-like appearance down the toes here of our Rex, which looks pretty nice. I actually quite like the foot sculpt. Nicely painted nails again with the black. However, it doesn't look like we have a dew claw at all, which is a little bit of a downside. Instead of a dew claw, we get screw holes. And then as you move up here, you can see that the black just abruptly stops before we lead out into the tail. We still have that kind of armored look briefly here into the tail, but the black does not run out there at all, obviously showing that this figure wasn't painted all together like the figure was, I guess, put together after it was painted, because we don't have any of that black leading out there, which is unfortunate because it could have looked nicer if the black had run a little further, at least out onto the tail. But the tail, as far as the detail goes, does look pretty nice, even if the tail is exceptionally short. It does have some nice looking skin texture, has a pretty fun curve in the tail as well. You've also got some okay looking detail on the underside, but just like the Raptor, it is overloaded with screw holes, potentially more screw holes than I've ever seen on a dinosaur figure before, even outdoing Hasbro when it comes to screw holes, which is pretty impressive. Yet again, the light coloration, that white here of the underside, also stops abruptly at the tail. And that is definitely, again, a little bit of an eyesore for the figure. You're not going to see too much difference, I would say, over here, more so than what we had seen on the first side. Zuru doesn't usually get too far into detailing their figures to where you would see, like, difference on one side, like skin wrinkles or skin folds, skin stretching, anything like that, more so than what we saw on the other side. You can see that obviously the legs are really far apart as the Rex is kind of taking quite a far step forward. So the leg on this side definitely looks quite different compared to the initial side. You could see more injuries moving down the thigh, more really nice skin texture as well. And a pretty cool looking foot sculpt over here for the Rex as the Rex is about to pick its foot up off of the ground. It looks like, kind of has almost like a defensive type of a look to it. You can see a little more of the stomach region over here compared to what we saw on the previous side. You can also see that the transition here is pretty smooth as far as those colors go. Not perfect, but not terrible either. But it's definitely not as nice as the Raptor. I will say that I definitely like the Raptor more, but as far as kind of like a young Rex goes, he's sort of fun, I guess. As far as articulation goes, just like with the Raptor, we've got the jaw articulation, again, as well as the tongue. We also have arm articulation, but that kind of moves the neck, so obviously you can see we have neck articulation as well. However, the legs, again, are not articulated. They do not move at all, and you can see that neither leg moves. The tail is articulated, and that's because every ounce of articulation on this figure is all associated with the action features. So we'll press the tail down, and it has the same sound that we had on the Raptor, I believe. I think that was the exact same sound effect they used for that figure. And I will say it does look really neat, like the positioning and the noise and everything looks pretty fun. Gives you kind of like that old school dinosaur feel for the figure. The only downside as far as the action feature and everything goes is the fact that, like I said in the Raptor review, if you leave the tail go early, it cuts the roar off immediately. Like it's right in the middle of it, it just cuts it off very abruptly. So if you want to hear the entire roar, you have to hold it the whole time, because as soon as you let it go, it stops right away. But it's, I guess, pretty cool. It just really could have used more articulation, like articulated legs and stuff like that could have helped the figure out quite a bit. For a size, lengthwise, you're looking at about 9 3/4 inches, or around 25 centimeters, approaching 10 inches. And then for a height, about 5 inches, or around 13 centimeters. Decently sized, I would say. And to show you that for a size comparison, There is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon acting like the T-Rex does not even exist right there, next to our Zuru Toys Dino Action Tyrannosaurus. And you can see that it does, again, have a decent size to it. It's not huge by any means, but I would say it's, like a medium approaching large-sized figure. Definitely way bigger than their older Dino Strike figures, but also at the same time not massive. And here's the point in time where you realize that they have absolutely no scale associated with them because our Raptor is the same size as the T-Rex, so obviously all the figures are pretty much in the same size range as far as these Dino Action figures go. Obviously, kids aren't going to care about scale or anything like that, so I'd say the size range is pretty good as far as what I would think kids would enjoy. And then for one final comparison, because I don't feel like we need to do too many for this figure, you've got a Mattel Velociraptor next to our Zuru Toys T-Rex here. Just one last little comparison to help give you an idea of the fact that they're not massive, but they aren't very small either. So this brand new Dino Action Tyrannosaurus Rex from Zuru Toys is another pretty fun figure, but it's not great. I feel like Zuru has been around for quite a little while now. They've been creating some pretty fun dinosaur figures, and I feel like the Dino Strike line is definitely a surefire hit. I've always been a big fan of those figures, but a lot of the other lines, like specifically the Robo Alive line, although they are really cool, I feel like they just haven't quite got there yet. Like, they're getting there. They're definitely making progress on their line, but I feel like they're not quite as awesome as they could be because they have a lot of potential to them, but there's always like little things that just don't allow the figures to hit greatness. Like the paintwork of this one specifically is pretty lazy. Like, it's not really that great. I do like the fact that we have painted nails and everything. We have paint that mostly runs through the body, which definitely looks nice, but the paintwork stopping so abruptly out on the tail does look a little bit ugly. Some of the transitions of colors aren't really that smooth. The actual glass eye of this one doesn't look very good. It could have looked a lot better, but unfortunately it just really obscures the eye and actually makes it a lot harder to see. I feel like it wouldn't be so bad if they actually had created like a light up feature for the figure and the eyes lit up, then you could probably see them a little better and it would have looked nicer, but just the glass eye alone definitely doesn't help the figure very much. Outside of that, though, it's a pretty fun looking figure, one that kids will definitely enjoy, but it's, again, pretty exaggerated as far as what a T-Rex would look like. It's clearly nowhere near accurate, but again, we don't really expect that from Zuru Toys. But some things like the proportions are just so off and the tail being so short, it looks a little weird. But at the same time, again, it almost kind of has like a very young Rex type of a look to it because it doesn't look like an adult to me. It looks more like a juvenile or maybe even a little bit earlier than that. But it's still okay. The paintwork isn't the best, like I said, but it's not terrible. It's got a pretty fun sculpt. The detail is a little muted in certain areas as well, which doesn't allow the figure to really, show off how good it could be, but the detail in like the body and stuff is really quite nice, so it's a little bit confusing as to why the detail's not so great in the face and not half bad at all in the body. It's got a cool action feature, which is pretty fun, but the lack of articulation in the legs isn't really that great. The sculpt is great in certain spots, not that great in other spots. The paint is pretty nice in certain spots, not that great in other spots. So it's kind of a hit or miss figure as far as this Rex goes, but still pretty fun. And again, at $10, that's what they cost at Walmart. It's not a bad purchase at all. So if you are interested in this, make sure you head to your local Walmart, grab yourself this or any of the other very cool Dino Action figures, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.